this border war. Fans called it Moonshine Throwdown. I think that's the best rivalry name, an unofficial name, but the best rivalry name I've come across.
Yeah, unofficial that should become official soon enough.
Embrace it.
Green keeps it himself, looking for the end zone. Isaiah Green, touchdown! Quarterback keeper for 17, and Marshall back up by 2 touchdowns.
Story toward Jackson, got separation to the 20, to the 10, and he will go. Lucky Jackson from 54 yards out. After a Western Kentucky record 16 catches a week ago, he gives the Hilltoppers the early lead today.
Pressure off the edge. Screen delivers. What a catch for Levias, who brings it in. Armani Levias to the house. Touchdown, Marshall.
And will 46 come on the field? Yes, he will. Corey Munson, the freshman, the true freshman out of Warner Robins, Georgia. As long as 48. This will be from 52 yards. From the far hash mark, John Haggerty, the punter, will hold. Jared Nash will snap it. It's definitely long enough. It is good! Unbelievable. The true freshman, Corey Munson, hammers it home from 52 yards.
What a clutch kick there to win the ball game.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Throwdown podcast. This week, the series of position group breakdowns continues. We're talking secondary this week. Trace is with me right now, and as usual, when we're talking toppers, Stephen will join the broadcast. But for now, it's just Trace and me, so we're going to talk the herd until Stephen can get his ducks in a row and join the show. Failed to mention last week when we made our triumphant return that you should, of course, follow us on Twitter at MoonshineTD, at MSTD_podcast. And, of course, please subscribe to the show so you do not miss an episode. You can find us anywhere that podcasts are basically played, but everybody now basically gets their podcast from 2 places, maybe 3, Spotify, iHeart, and Apple Podcasts. And, of course, we're on all 3 of those and a number of smaller outlets as well, like SoundCloud, if you're not into that other stuff. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. We sure do enjoy making these episodes, and we really enjoy it when our listen count goes up. So, Trace, let's talk about the secondary for the herd this year. Overall, Phil still rates the unit 4th in Conference USA, which both of us are like, hey, kind of an eyebrow raiser. Nothing against him, but we just thought, wow. As harsh it seemed as he was on the linebacker unit, which we thought should have been rated higher, he's a little friendly on the secondary unit, which we thought is really where the middle of the pack, they got to prove it ranking should be, right? Yeah. So it wouldn't have surprised me if this was a 6th ranked unit, as I'm sure it wouldn't have surprised you, but 4th is a nice little perk. So maybe, he's had an interview with these head coaches and maybe he's been led to believe that the unit's in a little bit better position than we think it is, which is a good thing. So thoughts on the unit. Talk to me, first of all, I guess, who's departed? We know Chris Jackson. He was drafted in the 7th round by the Tennessee Titans. So he is gone. Who else is gone from the unit, Trace?
Well, according to the Phil Steele preview, there's only 2 guys from the unit that is actually gone. Of course, you mentioned Chris Jackson and then Kerryon Morrell, who was also another multi-year, starting caliber cornerback. So they're both gone, but other than that, everybody's back. I mean, they haven't – so maybe that's why he's giving them 4th. It's just because they have a lot of depth back, a lot of players in there. And, I mean, it's like we also mentioned, I think a lot of that might have to do with the fact that he expects or maybe thinks Brandon Drayton might get involved in the defense some this year. All the lot of drama surrounding him recently and whatever. We're not going to get into that. But if he's on the team, that's a help. I mean, that's a plus. I mean, there's no doubt about it. We've been pretty high on him the last couple of years. He's a pretty solid player. And if he can contribute any this year, I don't know what his status is, but if he can contribute, that's going to be a big addition to the secondary. And I mean, just looking at the safeties, I'm pretty pleased with it, with the depth they have there, to be honest with you. And there's a couple guys kind of waiting in the wings there that could become much bigger factors this year. One guy in particular that I thought was going to be a lot bigger factor than he ended up being, but I think that he actually got redshirted last year. I think Pitts, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah, he redshirted. Yeah, but
yes.
is he listed on here?
He is. Yep.
Okay, there he is. Yep.
Print.
Hiding on me there at the end of a row. But yes.
Yep.
Yes, he did redshirt last year. I think he appeared in a couple of games, and then they decided to redshirt him. I don't know if he got dinged up or whatever. But back to Brandon Drayton for a second. It surprised me to see him on this roster because I thought he was gone. And like you said, if he isn't, that can only help the team because this guy's a senior. We've seen him make plays before, and I'll be honest with you, Trace, at the safety position, you just can't teach 6'3". So hey, he's made plays before, interceptions before, so you know he's sure-handed enough to go up and get the ball. Some of those very acrobatic and athletic interceptions as well. And he's not afraid to lay the wood. So if he can find his way in the rotation, even on a limited basis, this is a big plus for the Herd. So let's talk about the unit as a whole. I'll go down what Phil has listed as the starting 4, and then we'll talk about those guys, and we'll talk about who else these Herd fans might be hearing in the rotation. So first off, Stephen Gilmore. He's a junior now coming in, the 5'11", 163-pounder. Had a rough go of it a little bit as a freshman, but that you expect that when you get thrown to the fire straight out of high school, take your lumps, and it pays dividends later in your career, which is what you hope. He had a really decent year last year, got much better towards the end of the year. That's a theme that I always say, had a very good middle end of the season because that's what you continue to see. So big things expected from Stephen Gilmore. Moving down, Jalen McLean-Sapp is senior. It seems like this guy's been around forever, but he is finally a senior. Not even a redshirt senior, but it just feels like he's been there like a decade. 5'11", 179-pounder, another guy that will be leaned on heavily on the outside. Moving to the safety positions, Micah Abraham, the super sophomore, really impressed as a freshman. And I got some really positive things to say about him, the 5'10", 169-pounder. And then moving on to free safety, Najee Johnson, the other senior, 5'10", 180-pounder. Najee Johnson's another guy that I feel like has been there forever, but you know, he's just kind of plugged in and been consistent and made a lot of plays. So, Trace, talk to me about those 4 guys, and then we'll touch on a few guys that's in the rotation.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a projected starting 4 kind of thing, I think those are 4 pretty high caliber players.
Solid, yeah.
They're solid. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, just looking at Gilmore, I mean, he's played a lot of plays his first couple of years. I mean, he's really coming on pretty strong. And then, of course, you know, Micah Abraham had a really solid freshman year, especially in that bowl game with the pick 6 and all that. You know, that was very impactful. So I expect big things from him, which I'll lead into more later. And then, of course, I mean, they talking, you know, Jalen McLean-Sapp. It's a strange situation that he's been in the last couple of years. It's like, I don't know if he's just been hurt or if he's just not been able to get into games or what, but like he has not played nearly as much as I thought he would be playing. And this year, I think he'll get to play more. I mean, barring anything crazy. So I'd like to see that. And then, of course, Najee Johnson. I mean, yeah, like you said, he's been here for, well, this is his 4th year, basically 4-year starter. His coming out party was the 2017 MSTD.
Yes, sir.
Game there, pick 6. That was pretty daggone impressive. So he had a really good year last year if you look at the stats. So I think those 4 right there are pretty high caliber, and I think that they'll really lead the charge out there. But there are some guys waiting in the wings like we're going to touch on here soon that can and probably will contribute as well.
Well, right off the bat, Micah Abraham for me is so impressive. What he managed to do as the season progressed. I mean, if you paid close enough, even if you didn't pay close attention, you saw the casual fan could watch this guy literally grow up on the field as the season progressed. He just got better and better week in and week out. This is a guy, when you think about that, we'll toss a name out there that comes in recency for Herd fans, Malik Gant, right? Yeah. Mr. Everything. Micah Abraham reminds me a lot of Malik Gant, with the exception of he doesn't play as close to the line of scrimmage yet. But that doesn't mean that's not going to be a part of his game moving forward. But, man, he is really doing a great job from a safety spot. Stephen Gilmore, I think, is the guy that he's got to be the quote-unquote lockdown corner. He's got that potential, right? He's got the bloodlines, of course. I mean, his big brother, welcome to the 99 club. And
I was just going to say that.
Stephon Gilmore, right? So, it's all there. We'll see if this is the leap year that we talk about from freshman to sophomore year for quarterbacks. Hopefully for Gilmore, it's sophomore to junior year. So you get 2 years of lockdown production out of him. McLean Sapp, I do believe, was dinged up at least one of the years and missed a fair amount of action. But, being that he's been around the program for 4 years now, he has played a fair amount of ball. It's just time for him to make the most of this senior season. And we've seen that with her defenders in the past. They make the most out of that one real opportunity. And, of course, the name that comes to mind for me and for most Herd fans is going to be on the other side of the ball from a few years ago. That's DeAndre Reeves, right? Played sparingly and then really made the most out of his senior campaign. So let's see if McLean Sapp can do the same thing. Najee Johnson, dude, is there really a more I don't want to say underappreciated, but he does not get the pub that anybody else gets, but he is so super solid and so super consistent. So is this the best starting four that Marshall's been able to trot out in since maybe Darryl Roberts left that secondary?
It could be. It really could be. I remember last year I was pretty high heading into this in the last season about the starting four as well. But I think this one might be maybe even a little bit better just because they have a little more people behind them waiting they could step in. And I want to see, like you said, some of these guys, McLean Sapp, maybe Drayton, maybe Gilmore, whoever, get some more playing time, get more consistent playing time because, we've seen flashes of it but they haven't always been in there at all times. So, maybe now that they'll get more of an opportunity with Jackson and Morrell gone, maybe now the corners and whoever else will step up and really show out. So that's what we're hoping for. That's what Phil Still's thinking if they got him at fourth. So we'll see.
So let's talk about some of those guys. We've talked about Brandon Drayton. We've mentioned Derek Pitts. I know you want to talk a little bit more about him. What I recall of Derek Pitts was that he was a fabulous prep secondary player from West Virginia, one of the top recruits, if not the top recruit in the state that year. Went to West Virginia University out of high school, even played there a couple games, got an interception, made some stats. He put some numbers in the column, so to speak, started a couple games and then decided to transfer out. And, with the redshirt season, acclimated to the program, he knows what is expected from this defense now, then this could be a big-time game changer for the Herd. And it would not surprise me if he sees regular playing time and becomes and moves somebody from a starting spot. I'm not saying they will. I'm just saying it wouldn't surprise me if it did. But after you get past Drayton and Derek Pitts, looks like a little bit of a youth movement with the exception of Naquan Reynolds. So who else do you have that you think may take a leap this year or may see some increased playing time? But I did, in a quick scan, it looked like a lot of freshmen, redshirt freshmen, sophomores. So, it's not a lot of experience, I would say, after those 6 guys.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I'm not familiar enough with most of these players that are listed as the backups here. To be perfectly frank, I'm not going to try to act like I'm all knowing everything. I know everything because when it comes to this, a lot of these guys, I just flat out don't know anything about them. And I think that's most of the case for most Marshall fans because, the guys never literally stepped on the field before. How are you supposed to know what to expect? Right. Or what to expect if they'll even get in the game at all. And we don't even know if Brandon Drayton's going to play. There's a lot of – that's one thing that I think is very maybe not concerning, but could be concerning is the fact that there's a lot of kind of unknowns with this unit because, we've already touched on some of it. McLean Sapp not always played the most. Drayton, his situation. Pitts hasn't played the most. So there's a lot of guys that we just don't we think that they could be a certain type of player, but unless we see it with our own eyes and unless they actually get the opportunity, they might not become that. So, there's a lot of kind of question marks surrounding this unit, and once they get to have to start putting guys in and as far as the depth and everything, it could get a little bit dicey just because, how many times have we talked about freshman corners and freshman secondary players getting shredded a lot? How many times have we talked about that?
Well, we talked about it last year. You've said it, I don't know how many times in reference to Chris Jackson, but it was true. It was not a knock on the guy. It was just he was trial by fire, and the same thing happened to Gilmore. So after you get past Gilmore and McLean Sapp, the guys that are listed to back them up, you're looking at sophomore, redshirt freshmen. So there's going to be a real youth movement. Kylan Roach is a guy that I have heard about. Yeah. I have seen on the roster before. I don't know if he's, I'm sure he's gotten into the game in some capacity, but as far as tabulating any corner type stats, I don't know about that. And then Charles Bell, listed as the number 2 behind McLean Sapp, redshirt freshman, 5'11", 195. Like I said, it's a real youth movement. So these guys are going to get in the game. I mean, you can't expect Gilmore and McLean Sapp to play every snap,
every down,
and stay healthy all season long. They're going to get tired. They're going to need a breather, and heaven forbid they can stay healthy. But you're only going to achieve that if you give them a rest from time to time. So overall, I think the unit has potential. At least the starting 4 guys and another 2 or 3 guys that we mentioned. Those safeties look like they're in really, really strong shape.
Yeah.
They go too deep at both, and it's fine. I don't think there's going to be any real drop-off from production or strength if any combination of the 4 guys is in the game. And the problem, I believe, lies at depth at corner. So, we'll have to see how that goes. But of the guys we talked about before, this is interesting to me. Who's the biggest loss? Because I know you weren't as you did not like Chris Jackson, but you weren't super friendly to him and his play. So Morrell had a pretty solid season, came with a big interception, the Moonshine Throwdown early in the game, when Western tried that halfback pass or whatever, or wide receiver. I can't remember who threw the ball, if it was a receiver or a back, but still, he played well, but he also had his moments where he got lit into in certain games. So who's the biggest loss between Morrell and Jackson?
Yeah, I still think it's Chris Jackson. I mean, at the end of the day, even though I've said it and many Herd fans have said it, that he was maybe not quite as good as a lot of people thought he was. But, at the end of the day, the guy did get drafted. He got drafted. He's a great athlete. He was a 2-time, 3-time all-conference player, 1-time first team, 2-time second team. So, the guy was productive. He had his moments. You would have liked to have seen him play more consistently, but when he was playing well, he was solid. It's just the problem is you didn't always get that. But I still think he's the toughest to replace. It doesn't really matter what you think of him. I think he was Marshall's for the last 4 years. He was probably Marshall's best secondary player. Well, no, I take that back. Best corner, not best second. Malik Gant holds that one. Yeah. But I think he was our best corner for about the last 4 years. So, even though he was up and down, I still think he's harder to replace. At the end of the day, you can't argue with results, and he's got some all-conference selections, and he got drafted. So that's more than most players can say.
Yeah, anytime you lose a 4-year starter that ends up in the NFL,
it's
a big loss. And, even if certain things happen on the field that, I hate to use the word expose because that's not what I mean. But, if certain things happen on the field that, don't go your way, there's still the factor that he's been on the field for 4 years. There's a leadership mentality there. He knows the defense. He can help get guys lined up in that secondary. And that's something that you have that's going to fall on someone else now. Yeah. So that being said, who are you most excited to see out of this unit in 2020?
Yeah, I'm most excited to see Derek Pitts. And I was excited to see him last year and obviously didn't get a very big opportunity to do so. I think he only recorded 4 tackles last year. And obviously redshirted. So but this year I expect, and Phil Steele also said that he's going to have a much larger role this year. And I agree with that. Just look at it. The guy was a starter for a Big 12 school I mean, that's pretty daggone good. So, I mean, I think this guy could be really, really good, especially in Conference USA. And Marshall, quite frankly, needs him to really play well. They need him to step up because they need some of that depth. Like we said, that depth's extremely inexperienced and almost some of them have absolutely no experience. So they're going to need him to step up, and I think he will if he's given the opportunity. But that's the reoccurring theme of pretty much all these episodes, if they're given the opportunity. If they're given the opportunity. So, like, I'd like to see him get – I'm not going to put a certain number on the number of plays he would get a game, but I like to see him in there pretty frequently, and I think he can have a big year.
Yeah. I personally am excited to see – it's kind of a toss-up for me. I'm really intrigued to see how much more of a lockdown corner that Gilmore becomes, if he becomes that. And I'm really, really excited to see the development and continued rise of Micah Abraham. Yeah. Marshall has just fielded good safety after good safety after good safety, seemingly Doc Holliday's entire tenure. And Micah Abraham is just what seems like another in a long line of really exciting safeties at Marshall. So who will be your MVP for the 2020 secondary for the Herd?
Yeah, I had to really think about this one because there was 2 or 3 guys I was considering, but I ended up going with Nazeeh Johnson. I really like him. He's been really very quietly good for about 3 years now, and I expect the quietness to go away this coming year. I think it's going to be a loud good. I think he's going to be like an emphatic, yeah, I'm here, I'm good. It's going to be kind of one of those deals. And, I mean, last year he was third on the team in tackles. I mean, he was the third leading tackler last year. Had almost 90 tackles, had a real solid season. It's just you don't really think about it, though. Like it's just like all the stuff that he does sneaks up on you. I mean, like we said, his coming out party was the 2017 Moonshine Throwdown, and that was after that. Everybody pretty much knew who he was, except it seems like his production is quiet, but it's noticeable. It's a very noticeable production, and I expect him this year to have, honestly, kind of maybe a Malik Gant kind of season. I mean, he could get up over 100 tackles. He could start really doing some crazy stuff this year. So I think Nazeeh Johnson's my MVP. But there was another guy that I was very close to picking who actually ended up being my breakout player, but just as a little teaser on that one too. But,
Well, I think the MVP this year will be Stephon Gilmore.
I wish we had
Stephen Gilmore. because he's tasked with what appears to be the number one corner and all that comes with that. So that's one of the most high-profile positions on a football team, honestly. It garners a lot of attention. And in a league like Conference USA, which is generally fairly pass-happy, depending on who you're playing, there's a lot of pressure that goes with that. So will he rise to the occasion? Yeah, I think he will. I think that you're going to see a sizable leap in productivity and talent and development from last year to this year. So give me Stephen Gilmore as the MVP. So breakout player. Who's the breakout player for 2020?
Yeah, this guy was probably number 2 on my list of potential MVPs, but I went with Micah Abraham. It's kind of a little bit maybe unfair to call him a breakout because he had a breakout year last year to an extent. I mean, most of it was late, but he still had, I think, 38 tackles, I think is what I looked up. I mean, that's a pretty good, for rather limited playing time. He had a stellar year, and the fact that he really, really had an impressive game in the bowl game, having that big, long pick six. I mean, that was a huge play in that game. So, I mean, I think Abraham's going to have a really, really good year. Like, it could be like one of the best years that they've had in a while at that position. So, I mean, I think he's going to be phenomenal. Honestly, could be a phenomenal player in the next couple of years. I mean, he's still young. He has such a good first impression on everybody, and I think it's going to only get better this year. So my breakout player is Micah Abraham, and I think he could double or maybe even triple his tackles and all that kind of stuff. So who knows? I think it's going to be a big year, though.
Yeah, as sexy of a pick as it would be for me to say Gilmore, as much as I want to agree with you and say Micah Abraham because he only started 7 games last year, and if he gets a full complement of games and gets to start the majority of the season, there's no doubt that his stats could double or triple. But here's I'm going right off of what you said a few minutes ago about Najee Johnson. You don't think he's going to be quiet anymore. So that, to me, he's been consistent, but this is the breakout year because he's going to put everybody on notice that, yep, I've been doing it, and I've been doing it consistently for 3 years, but now I'm going to show that I'm a first-team all-conference caliber safety. So give me Najee Johnson as the breakout player in 2020. So here's the fun part.
Oh, yeah.
What is your hot take for the 2020 Herd secondary?
Well, I think I'm pretty happy with this one. I was looking I was reading the defensive back column under the preview for Phil Steele, and he had them listed last year as number 49 ranked pass defense rankings. They were number 49 last year, which honestly kind of surprised me that it was that high. But I think this year they will have a higher pass defense ranking than they did last year. And that's without, an NFL draft pick and another multi-year starter. That's what I'm going with. I'm not going to say, it could be only one spot better. It could be 48th. It could be 30th. It could be 35th. I don't know, but I think that they will have a higher ranking in that this year as an overall unit. I think they'll step up. They'll rise to the challenge. I think it'll be a better year for the secondary. There's still question marks. Obviously, I think there's pretty much question marks at every position for the most part, besides maybe like one or two. But I think they'll have a better year. I think they'll have, even if it's not like dramatically better, I think they'll be better in that ranking this year, which, that could be considered bold just because of who they're losing, couple, good players that they're losing, and the fact that they have a lot of unproven players. So that's what I'm going with. That's more of a mild take, but it depends on who you ask. It could be a hot take. So
now I've been concocting this hot take off of the preface that my memory is serving me right. So you might have to correct me and blow this thing all to hell right off the get-go.
Okay.
Did Marshall not have an interception from a corner or a safety until like fairly deep into the season last year? I feel like that was a talking point or something.
That sounds right, yeah.
Yeah, I just feel like that was a thing, and I could be completely wrong, but that's what I was basing my hot take off of. So off of the fact that I'm remembering that they struggled to get interceptions from the corner and safety position, I'm going to say that 6 different Herd defenders from the secondary have multiple interceptions this year.
Ooh.
6 different guys have at least 2 interceptions this year. I think that's kind of hot.
It is. And I was looking at that right now. I was reading the interceptions from last year, and Tavonte Beckett had 1. Amari Cobb had 1. Those aren't secondary players. Najee Johnson had 1. Stephen Gilmore had 2. Micah Abraham had 1, and Chris Jackson had 1. So there weren't very many.
Right. Now, Gilmore had one that was called back that was supposed to go 100 yards, which was a killer play, but still. So there you go. So Marshall's secondary last year was not very keyed in on getting interceptions. So 6 guys getting at least 2 is going to be a tall task. But we just talked about a lot of guys there. So we'll see how it goes. Hang with us on the other side of this break. Steven's ready to come in here, and we're going to talk Toppers secondary. Hang with us. It's the Moonshine Throwdown Podcast.
Play action. White, far side. Picked off. This is going to be a pick 6.
And just as I open my big mouth, you get Najee Johnson going ahead and jumping that route, throwing the ball across the field. Mike White, you got to have a lot of arm strength to go ahead and complete that throw.
Pick 6, and that's going to be Johnson's first interception as a college football player for the redshirt freshman.
What a great play by Johnson. You see Johnson dropping back into coverage, spinning his head around once he sees the wide receiver wide open the way he was, and going ahead and jumping that route. I'm sure Mike White didn't see him over there either.
We are back. Stephen Moffitt again has joined the show. It's time to talk some Western Kentucky secondary. And as I alluded to before the break, just like defensive line, just like linebackers, this defensive unit for the Toppers is stacked. And Phil still agrees with us. Number 2 overall ranking in the conference for the secondary. And boy, they boast a lot of upperclassmen, a lot of experience along the starting 4 or 5 if you count that nickel back as part of the secondary, or if you lump it in with the linebackers. It really doesn't matter. The linebackers is second-ranked unit as well. Stephen, let's talk about the usual suspects. Some of these guys have been there seemingly forever. Some of these guys fairly new to the program but made a big impact towards the middle end of last year. So let's talk about the usual suspects. Let's talk about what we can expect from these guys and the unit. And then, we'll mention some names that the Topper fans should pay a little bit closer attention to, who are, poised to take that next step in the depth chart and prove why this is the number 2 unit in the league. So let's talk about those 4 guys. Let's start, 5 guys. Let's start Nickelback listed Trey Meadows, senior, 6'1", 185. The 2 corners listed Deontay Ruffin, senior, 5'11", 185. Cornerback number 2, Roger Cray, senior, 5'9", 170. Man like myself. And strong safety, senior, Antoine Kincaid, 5'11", 195. Free safety, Devin Key, senior, 6'1", 210. I mean, it's not a bad thing when you're starting 5 seniors in the secondary. So let's talk about these guys. You can run through them one by one, talk about them as a whole, whatever you want to do, but let's get some insight on these guys.
Yeah, I mean, that's a stacked unit. I kind of the same as our defensive line and linebackers. I guess I would need to look at UAB's depth chart and figure out how in the world 5 seniors are number 2 to UAB. But whatever. I guess I remiss. But these guys are they're going to be the backbone. As long as that front 4 is causing havoc in the backfield, forcing quarterbacks to make quick throws, bad throws, poor decisions. I mean, these guys should be feasting on all those decisions. And might have a hot take alluding to that later. But, Trey Meadows was a highly sought-after guy, came over, was formerly committed to NC State. We talked about him having a rough first game last year versus Maine, but he stepped up after that and became a guy we could rely on. Devin Key, heavy hitter, has seems like he's been playing since Dowdy was around. He's always got a nose on the ball. Just watch on defense. Every time there's a tackle, he's either in on it or he's right there, pounding the dirt right on the guy's heels. So he's looking to hit somebody or make a play. Ruffin, Cray, Kincaid. There's just so much experience with those guys. And now they're going into their 3rd year in Clayton White's system. Fourth year in Clayton White's system. You just can't put a price on that. They know each other. They know what to expect from each other. They know where to be. This is just going to be a really solid unit that it really is going to cause a lot of havoc and probably shut down a lot of passing games. So I'm very excited to see him.
You mentioned Clayton White, and that's something that we really haven't been talking about as we do these breakdowns. It's something we've done in the past, but for whatever reason we've forgotten to do it this year, is talk about those coaches and how rare is it really to have a guy like Devin Key, for example, 4-year starter who's had the same defensive coordinator for 4 years. That just at the G5 level, that's increasingly rarer and rarer because I don't know how Clayton White is still at Western Kentucky. He's that good of a coach. And it just shows that they're blessed that he's still here, right? So to have the luxury of the same coaching for 4 years, that's such a blessing. So this is the year defensively that everybody should be looking up at Western Kentucky, and they have the luxury of looking down at everyone else, because just about position for position, you can line them up with almost any other team and go position for position, and they're going to field a better athlete or a better skilled player at that particular position. And I don't think it's any secret that I've been a huge Devin Key fan for a long time. going all the way back to his freshman year. He just always seems to impress, and I know what I'm going to get out of Devin Key. He's absolutely my favorite defender on the Western Kentucky roster, without a doubt. Another guy that really impressed me last year was Antoine Kincaid, especially late. A lot of big plays being made, a lot of athleticism being shown, big interceptions, athletic interceptions. I mean, this guy, to me, I was like, okay, well, he's a serviceable safety. And then at the end of the year, I thought, wow, this dude's a legit, like, all-conference caliber player. These two corners, Ruffin, excellent player, Cray, solid player, and then Trey Meadows, you alluded to, Power 5 type guy from NC State, came up from the JUCO ranks. Had a rough first game, but boy, if that didn't end in a hurry, and by the end of the year, he proved that he was as advertised. So, super awesome unit. I don't know what else to say about him, really. As long as they can stay healthy, I think you're going to be in pretty good shape. Now, there are going to be times when somebody may get dinged up or somebody's going to need to take a rest, and that's when the depth is going to have to show, and the skill from those behind the starting 4 or 5 guys, depending on what the lineup looks like. So let's talk about a few of those guys. Who on your list of players will be the first ones in the game when somebody needs a break?
Yeah, the first two will be a couple guys that we plucked from the JUCO ranks. I know the staff was super, super excited when we signed Dominique Bradshaw. Felt like we really stole him away from some bigger programs. Some big guys were coming after him. We got him committed, signed. And I really think that, especially next year when he is, a senior and replacing some of these guys, he's going to be a huge asset for us. He's going to have the opportunity, though, to be behind some guys, learn the system, and still get some playing time, I'm sure. I don't think you can keep a guy of his caliber off the field. And then John Blunt, another JUCO guy, guys that have playing experience, kind of know the game speed a little bit. They just need to learn the system, learn the playbook, the calls, the audible, stuff like that. So luckily he'll be able to come in behind some guys with some senior leadership and learn from them. And then we got AJ Braithwaite, TJ Springer, Amari Alexander, all guys that have been around, should start to see more snaps this year. They've got to come in, they've got to see the field, whether it be injuries or breathers. We've got to get some more guys on the field, just because these, the guys that are listed as starters can't play, literally every snap, even though they may play most of them. But there is some youth behind those starting 5. Luckily we have a couple of JUCO guys with some experience. But we've kind of said, this has got to be the year as far as the experience and the age of our team, where if they're going to accomplish something, this kind of has to be the year. Kind of all the stars are aligning for them. They need to get it done. But we've got the pieces in place, a good mix of leadership and some youth, and then the right JUCO guys plugged in there to fill in any holes. And especially experience-wise, when you do start rotating players, it's nice to have those guys in the queue ready to go.
Yeah, one thing that I noticed just glancing through this list of names and classes is, when we were talking Marshall secondary, Trace and I, it was the starters, and then after that, it seemed to be like freshman, redshirt freshman. It was a lot. It was a real youth movement. Here I see some of that, but I also see a lot of junior, sophomore, junior. So it looks like you have a nice mix of 2 or 3 guys from every class that's spattered throughout this roster. So there's not just, okay, once we get past the first wave of starters, it's a real youth movement. I think depth-wise, Western might be in a much better situation to be able to weather the storm of an injury or, just losing a guy for a week or two, not anything extended, but or maybe just, getting banged out of a game. unlike the Herd, the Tops seem to have a better mixture of, senior, junior, redshirt, sophomore, freshman type thing rather than, all redshirt freshmen and freshmen after those starting five. So let's talk about some losses. I know there were some losses from the program from last year's team. I don't think we mentioned those guys, but I believe there was a handful who actually departed from the program that, fans will take note of.
Yeah, I mean, we've had three guys, transfer wise. And I believe Cannon Jackson was a senior, and then you had L.A. Rogers Anderson and Clayton Bush that are in the portal. I think the most notable name there is going to be Clayton Bush. He was a primary punt returner for a lot of last year. Was a true freshman, Bowling Green kid. Legacy, his father played linebacker at Western years ago. Came from South Warren, where Iggy came from. He hit the portal over the summer due to some personal issues. Not going in depth about that, but had his own little run-in where he kind of quietly got the option to transfer on his own, to say. So I think he'll kind of be the biggest loss. I know he mainly got special team reps, but he was a heck of an athlete. Somebody that down the line, this year, next year, really could have been stepping into a big role. Obviously not impossible to replace with the senior leadership we have and then digging into the JUCO well like we did. But he'll kind of be that guy that we would have called on more, that somebody else is going to get some snaps because he's not around this year.
Yeah, I mean, and talking about returning duties as well. So it's just one more hole you got to fill. And I'm sure there are plenty of capable athletes on the field to be able to do that, or on the roster to be able to do that. But still, it's kind of a double whammy. You lose depth at corner potentially, and or in the secondary, and then somebody on special teams that was a real contributor already. So all that being said, who are you most excited to see this year?
I can't remember who I said last year. I wish I could. I need to go back and listen. But I'm most excited to see Trey Meadows, and I may have said him last year too, just because of the pedigree and just how highly rated an athlete he was coming to us. Granted, I should have been a little bit more careful because it was, first year coming to D1, first year in a new system, and then he kind of got. He got picked on versus Maine. I mean, I'm just going to put it out there. I remember watching from the new sideline. I was actually walking with David Jost. He walks the sideline from pretty much following the action as it goes, and they were just picking on him that whole fourth quarter. I just kept going, who is that number 7 getting burned? I mean, they were killing the guy. But, he had a bad game. He put it behind him. He had a good rest of the season. And I think this year, with the experience of last year, a season under his belt, with Clayton White, with all these other guys, I really expect a big season and some senior leadership out of him, and that athleticism that he definitely brings to the program is going to shine through. He's going to have a big year.
Yeah, I don't think that's will be any surprise to see him play more solidly. Like I said earlier, he did a complete 180 from game 1 till the end of the season. And I think he'd be the first one to tell you that he had his worst game so far in a Hilltopper uniform right out of the gate. But for me, who I'm most excited to see this year, I always fall back to what I say when we're talking about any position group. And that's like, if somebody's a known entity and I may be excited to see them play, but I already know what I'm going to get from them. So in this category, give me Antoine Kincaid, because I'm really excited to see the continued evolution and development of what we were really starting to see towards the middle end of last season. And if that is any indicator of what we can see in a continued trajectory, Western might have themselves the most lethal tandem of safeties in the league, if not already. But I am really intrigued by the continued development of Antoine Kincaid. So who will be the unit's MVP for 2020?
The MVP, I got to go with the grandfather of the unit. Even it seems like he's been around, like I said earlier, since Dowdy was playing here. Devin Keat. I mean, the guy he's a heavy hitter, nose for the ball. Just he's always somewhere. He's always making plays. He's just always sticking his head in, looking to do something. I'm not sure if he has, but he should be becoming a first-time father like any day now. I know it was announced on social media, so I think something like that puts another feather in his hat for a reason why he's playing and trying to get motivated to get to the next level. So I think Devin Key is definitely going to be kind of the anchor back there, just making some plays. He's going to have a little Troy Polamalu about him. He's just going to be back there hitting people. Flying everywhere, sideline to sideline, just hitting people. I love it.
Yeah, and this is where I agree with you 100%. There is absolutely no way that I could pick anybody else because I've been such a fan of how this guy plays for 3 years heading into this fourth year. He's by far, my opinion, going to be the MVP of this season, and that is taking nothing away from the rest of these guys. They're all good at what they do. But if I've got to put my dollar on somebody, give me Devin Key. And if there happens to be any of those number 2 jerseys lay around, feel free to send one to your boy because, I'm a fan. Well, since we've talked about MVP, we've talked about who you're most excited to see. Who's the guy that's going to be the breakout player in 2020 for this unit?
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of the JUCO guys we picked up. I think it's somebody he's going to see the field. Obviously, I hope it's not because of injury. I think it's going to be because of his skill and what he's going to bring as far as JUCO experience. I think it's going to be Dominic Bradshaw. I mean, I still remember signing day, just how excited the whole staff was to get him on the team. Get his signing letter, his letter of intent signed and in the mail or on the fax machine as we're still doing it. But I think somebody with his caliber of playing experience, coming from JUCO ranks, again, maybe I should pump the brakes a little bit learn from Trey Meadows, but I just think that, filling those gaps, potentially, behind a lot of senior leaders, bringing a JUCO guy that isn't going to be leaned on from day one to do, be the lead dog. I think that's kind of a perfect position for him. He's bringing experience already. He's bringing athleticism. And he gets to sit behind some guys, learn the system, get in there. Maybe when the other team's gassed, he's coming in fresh, and he's going to make some plays. I think he's going to surprise some people, make a name for himself. And then next year, he's going to be that guy. Write it down right now. Next year, probably going to be my MVP. I'm just going to say it right now.
Okay, well, that's a hot take in and of itself, but it's a year ahead of time. But I think that's a good pick, and for the very same reason that I was going to say, you said he doesn't have to be the day one starter like Trey Meadows had to be. So he does have the opportunity to set back and get slowly acclimated to Conference USA football. Now, of course, Conference USA football is by no means world beaters, but still, it's a little bit different, cup of tea than JUCO and definitely different than high school. So that's a good pick. Actually, I think we're in agreement once again. I was leaning towards Bradshaw, and some of the points you just said kind of sold me on that fact. So give me Dominic Bradshaw as well, the 6 foot 180 pounder. All right, so here it is, hot take time for this unit. Stacked from top to bottom. So how hot can it be? What's the hot take for 2020?
Yeah, I mean, again, the number one unit in the league, number two, whatever you want to call them, number one, Phil still can be wrong occasionally, but the number one unit in the league, playing behind just a monster of a defensive line and defensive end, linebackers that are going to be wreaking havoc. Like I said in the last episode, we're going to be hitting quarterbacks. We're going to be getting a lot of tackles for losses, pressuring quarterbacks into making poor decisions, having to throw the ball. Because of that, one of our cornerbacks is going to lead the league in interceptions. one of our guys. And I'm gonna pencil in Mr. Trey Meadows, number 7, no fly zone. I think this is the year to shine. He'll be that shutdown guy. And I'm looking for some picks. I want to see some pick 6 out of him.
All right. Well, that's fairly hot, I would say. Here's my hot take. It's kind of a 3-pronged hot take, but it's all about the same guy. All right. And I'm going right back to the Devin Key Will. Senior year, going out with the big bang, going to set a career high in interceptions on the season. Current career high in a season is 3. So we're looking for at least 4 this year. For the 3rd consecutive season, he will garner himself a pick 6, and he's going to be a first-team all-conference safety. That's it. Devin Key is going to have the monster year to go out and put the cherry on the top of this Hilltopper career of his. That's it. That's the 2020 secondary breakdown, position group breakdown. Once again, we're trying to bring you the best information and insight that we possibly can. So let's get out of here on this note.
Trace, you got any final words? We'll get the heck out of here.
Yeah, the Herd secondary this year could be pretty interesting. I mean, you could look at it as kind of like it could make or break the season defensively, just because the last couple of years, I mean, I feel like the run defense has been solid. And matter of fact, 2 years ago it was flat out great. Last year it was still pretty solid. Run defense has held their own, but the pass defense is kind of what's been holding it back a little bit defensively. I mean, they've still been solid defensively. It's just the secondaries where a lot of teams really start making a lot of progression against Marshall. So if they can get that shirt up this year, just play more consistent ball, I like their chances defensively because I still think the run defense will be pretty good. I like the linebackers. D-line's kind of be a little work in progress for a little bit, but I still think ultimately the front 7 will be in good shape. But the secondary is what's really going to need to step it up. So if they can do that, Marshall's got a chance to be pretty good. I mean, at least, defensively, on the defensive side of the ball, they've been doing plenty enough over the last few years to where Marshall should be at a championship level. It's been the other side of the ball that hasn't held up their end of the bargain. So if the defense can keep playing like they're playing, if the secondary can play more consistent, then it'll be just more of the same. I mean, hopefully the offense will get together, but at least looking at the defensive side and the secondary, then they'll be pretty good shape, I think, ultimately.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off of that because it seems like the Marshall secondary doesn't let them down very often, but there's always that one game for sure that it just completely goes awry. And Charlotte comes to mind. Like, they could not stop Victor Tucker at all.
45 pass interferences all game.
And that's going to be more of the same this year because he's back. He's one of the finest wide receivers in the entire conference. Their quarterback's going to be a year better, and he was pretty good last year, even in terrible conditions. No. But I feel like if the Marshall secondary can play bend, don't break defense all year and just be good. They don't have to be great. I feel like if they can just be good, then Marshall can be good enough defensively to hold off just about everybody in the East, barring that one wheels falls off game.
Ultimately, it will happen, yeah.
Yeah, and then we've talked about Charlotte ad nauseum, but it just so happened that game, the wheels fall off defensive, or in the secondary, it also fell off kind of offensively as well. So it was just a perfect storm in a storm that kept Marshall essentially out of the Conference USA title game. But that's gone. We don't want to bring up ancient history, but if they can just be good enough, they don't have to be great. They don't have to carry the defense. I think they can play assignment football and be good enough to win the East. If this offense can find something other than Brendan Knox needing 200 yards a game. Or Xavier Gaines having to be Mr. Everything other than Knox, Yeah. If they can muster up enough offense to take the pressure off that defense, the secondary just needs to be good, not great.
Steve, a couple final thoughts, and we'll close it out.
Yeah, just we're getting closer and closer to hopefully a season. Kind of digging into the Bible and just getting to talk about these these familiar names and getting to just think about some of the exciting games they had last year and plays, and even just going back and just watching quick highlights from games. Hopefully we have some sort of semblance of a normal season, but no one knows exactly what that's going to look like yet. But even if we're playing with no fans, we just get to watch on TV. We're trying to get our fix and kind of love this avenue to get some information out there. A lot of our listeners might not have the Field Steel magazine. So we're basically regurgitating a lot of that information to them free of charge. You're just got to pick us up on any of the streaming services. And, Field Steel is obviously a very smart man, very good at what he does. And this team, especially on this side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball, should just be absolutely just fun to watch. And like we said about Clayton White sticking around, I mean, this guy's, a head coach in waiting, basically. I think that's the whole reason he's sticking around. I have no doubt that they've basically just said, whenever, if ever Helton moves on due to success,
right,
you are the guy, a la Petrino leaving and Braum getting handed the baton. So I really, I love that for him, and I love it for us because it's win-win. If we win enough that Helton unfortunately leaves, good problem to have that we got a guy that's been around, knows the players, and can just step right in, and we lose nothing, I feel like. He might not be the offensive guru, but he's a defensive guy. He can hire one of those. So really excited about this unit, this team, and, hopefully a season that it has a normal look to it, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm with you there. If we can
we
only
can
have
only
fans
have
that one game, I'll wear a
I'll wear
hazmat suit if I have to. Just give me a ticket to 10-10-20. I'll be there. I'll be there in full hazmat suit. I'll wear 10 masks if I have to. We'll do whatever we have to do. But yeah, singing the praises of Clayton White never gets old, really, because again, it's just astonishing. I can't believe he made it through the coaching carousel this year, and did not get hired away. It's utterly mind blowing. And who's to say he didn't get an offer? Who's to say? He just decided to pass. Maybe it wasn't the right opportunity for him. Maybe he does want to be the head coach at Western Kentucky. It's nice to have a guy that knows the community, knows the expectation, is okay with the expectations that are coming to grow around this program once again, and embraces that. So yeah, let's hope we get normal football. But until, next time, we'll just keep talking about these position groups until we can inch closer and closer. But, things trickle out just about every day that are not a sign of positivity. Some teams are already announcing, no season ticket sales this year. It's going to be first come, first serve. Other teams are already saying, well, we're going to cap our capacity and whatever. So we need a sharp turnaround. But anyway, I don't know. We'll come back at you with more awesome info. So until next week, Steve, take us out.
Go Tops.
Trace.
Go Herd.
We will see you next week. That's the Moonshine Throwdown podcast. Later.